We're gonna get started today. Thank you guys for showing up. A little smaller than last week, but we're gonna roll with it. So today is all about the legislative branch, and we're gonna talk today about what's going on. We're going to talk today about the kind of hierarchy as to how the legislative branch is organized in terms of leadership, the descriptions of those leadership positions. We're going to talk about Robert's rules, and we're going to have a mock debate. So in front of you, you guys will see that you have some legislation, you guys have some statistics about that legislation, and you have some hints about your Robert's rules. Along with that, you might be able to utilize, if you so choose, you can utilize your name tents, as they also have some great information about Robert's rules. Normally we would start with the Pledge of Allegiance, but we're not going to do that today. I think I want to save a lot of time for the debate. Paige is going to act as our parliamentarian for today.
I'm Shelby. Hi.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just read Paige here, and for some reason, yeah.
You are so lucky that name tag is on top.
I know. Yeah. Shelby is going to act as our parliamentarian for this evening, and Bill is going to. Bill Harlan, if you guys don't know, is our SGA advisor, unless you have another title that I don't know about.
That works.
And we're going to get started. And so, Bill, if you, at your leisure, would like to start talking to us.
So, not that I don't think you guys can't see the front well enough with the screens, but so that you know, we've invited Salina to join us by video conference, just because they're trying to get their SGA up and running a little bit. And so they were curious what we do for a training to see what they would like to do for a training. And that's why I'm going to stick with the microphone too, because that's the only way for them to hear us, though they haven't joined us yet. So it may all be for naught, but we will record it for them. Like Raj said, my name is Bill Harlan. I'm one of the technically 3 SGA advisors, myself, Dr. Heather Reed, who is the Associate Dean of Student Life and works with the executive branch a little more, so she goes to the executive committee, and then Andy Thompson, who deals with the judicial branch and the code of conduct issues. But the 3 of us kind of divide up our work with SGA, and my main role is working with the Speaker Pro Tem of Student Senate, and then coming on Thursday nights and kind of helping with the legislative process and how legislation should be written and worked through committees and approved through Student Senate. And so combining that with the fact everyone is upstairs enjoying the end of the year banquet for those who are phasing out of their term this week, it just made sense that I would have the chance to come meet you, hopefully, share some knowledge that I've gained since my time as an undergrad in Student Senate in 1997. Golly, that's a long time. So 21 years between being a grad student, fully employed at K-State. Yeah, I just realized that's probably before most of you were born, isn't it? Am I? No? Okay, so right on the border there. Crap. I am not very formal at all, so if you guys have questions as I'm talking about this, as new senators, I think this is really important information because I firmly believe that what you get out of your time, especially in Student Senate and the legislative branch, 100% depends on what you put into it. And so some of that is being present and being engaged, participating in discussions. That some of that is how you get stuff out of Student Senate personally and feel like you're making a difference. But it's also knowing kind of the actual process of how does Student Senate write legislation? How does it work through committees? How can I speak and influence what that legislation looks like? And then how can I operate during these meetings on the official part of how do I make things either pass or fail depending on how I feel about it. And I think what you see, it's always interesting later tonight at the end of the last meeting, the seniors have a chance to stand up and talk about their time in SGA. And they'll often talk about, what being involved in this room means to them. And it's usually very easy to tell, who the criers are going to be and who the people that don't have much to say are, because you see their participation throughout the years. And when they're really engaged and they're really involved, you can tell how much this group and this process means to them because they're putting that time in as a sophomore or a junior or in September and not waiting until April the 5th to invest in their time in Student Senate. So that's just kind of a preface of what I would encourage and why I think it's important to go through this training, because it helps you understand how you can engage in that process. So enough of me blathering on. We'll talk a little bit about who the leaders of the SGA, of the leadership of the, oh boy, the legislative branch are. Robert's Rules, and then there's a cool activity where you'll actually get the chance to participate in a debate in a really low pressure, everyone's not watching, what if I screw up sort of scenario, which is a pretty cool experience because usually that doesn't exist. And so next week when your first meeting is, as the new group, you're just thrown into it and away you go. And it can take a long time for someone to feel comfortable participating because, you know, now it counts, or whatever you want to say. So this is kind of a cool chance, and I encourage you to engage in that process just to kind of get a feel for it. I'm assuming this is a part of even a larger flow chart that you've seen about the structure of SGA, but we're looking at the legislative branch, and the leader of the legislative branch is the Speaker of the Student Senate. We'll talk a little bit about what their responsibilities are and where and how they're chosen in just a few minutes. It's the person who's responsible for the committee structure of Student Senate for these meetings, and then appointing those other positions that aren't elected within Student Senate. Speaker Pro Tem is then kind of the second in charge when the speaker is not here. You know, sometimes if they're a senior, they're doing college visits or med school visits or whatever, they have to be gone on some Thursday nights. The Speaker Pro Tem is the first choice of who would fill in for that. So they get to usually run a meeting or two throughout the year. They also have a couple of other responsibilities where they chair a couple of committees. They serve on the SGA Executive Committee, which is made up of like the committee chairs, speaker, speaker pro tem, student body president, attorney general, etc. And they kind of just get included in a lot of pretty interesting conversations, I think, on campus. You know, unfortunately, all of Senate can't participate when there's a budget meeting or some other conversation with administration. But the speaker and the speaker pro tem are the people that you're choosing to represent your voice as the elected group of representatives of the students of your college. They're who is representing that voice to the administration. So it's important when we go through that process in a couple weeks that you're thinking about who do I want, who do I trust to go and represent me in administration when I don't have that chance to participate. We also have the college caucus leaders, which is a position that's relatively new, but I think you've talked about the concept of college caucus and how it's meant to help you get to know the people who maybe have some similar interests in your college. They are chosen by the members of the college, so in a week or two, you'll have the chance to get together as a college and choose who you want to represent you. They work with the Speaker Pro Tem. That's one of their duties, is to kind of coordinate that process. And then we have the rest of the leadership of the legislative branch. You have the 6 committee chairs, governmental relations, on-campus allocations, priv fee, Senate Ops, student engagement, travel allocations. Talk about that some other time. Just know that those 6 committee chairs exist, and they are appointed by the Speaker of Student Senate. So there's a process that I think we'll talk about at some point, I know. And then ultimately, that's kind of who is responsible for them. So if somebody's slacking off, not doing their job, Speaker Pro Tem should be the one to encourage them to participate. And then you have the intern coordinators who work with a group of freshmen and sophomores or other students, but that's typically the group who come in the fall, who are new to campus or at least new to the concept of SGA and want to learn more. So those intern coordinators get a chance to work with them, and it's kind of a longer process than the crash course that you guys are getting in 2 to 4 weeks. They'll have a semester or longer to learn about it. And then you have the Student Senate Secretary and the Student Senate Parliamentarian, whose main job is to set up here on Thursday nights and to help the meetings run efficiently. Parliamentarians should know Robert's Rules of Order, which is the very common way of conducting business meetings that is not just a student government thing, but board meetings for companies, national organizations if you belong to, professional organizations, stuff like that. All use Robert's Rules, and often people don't know how to use them or what they are even. And so if you will be patient and learn and kind of engage in what Robert's rules are this year, it really will prove useful in the future for you. And it may seem like a huge pain when there's just something simple you want to accomplish during this meeting, but you can't because I can't speak now, or whatever that is. But there's a reason that those things do exist. And then the secretary's job, minutes, and the roll call votes when we're voting on bills. So whoever the new student senate secretary will have to get very good at everyone's names. And it's nice if we don't laugh too much when they really butcher them. But a little is okay. I talked a lot about a lot of this. So the Speaker of Student Senate, you chair the Senate meetings, you chair the Legislative Executive Committee. That's the SGA Executive Committee is the more common term we use for it. Committee chairs, Attorney General, Student Body President, Vice President, Chief of Staff, Speaker, Speaker Pro Tem, Senate Secretary, Parliamentarian, I think makes up that group. They appoint and supervise the committee chairs, all those positions. The other step that you guys will get to do is you'll get to choose what committee you want to participate in. So are you more interested in money, or are you more interested in talking with our legislators about what's happening on our campus or stuff like that? The speaker is the one who appoints the senators to those committees, and there's a process where you get to say what you're interested in and then make those choices. And then they also serve on Faculty Senate and the Faculty Senate Executive Committee. So it's kind of that chance for student voices to cross over into that faculty leadership to at least share your viewpoint, so that they can hear a student, whether or not they listen to them. We'll leave that debate up for someone else. So speaker elections. This is kind of the first thing that you will get to do as a student senator. There may be a couple of really fluffy pieces of legislation that are procedural that you may get to vote on, but this is kind of the first big choice, and I don't want to blow it out of proportion, but it does kind of set the tone for the year of what you're looking at. And the way that works is it's a 2-week process. Next week, in our first meeting, the current speaker, Jonathan, will open up nominations for people to nominate someone to serve next year as the Speaker of Student Senate. Anyone can be nominated. There really are no requirements other than the fact that you are a 2.0 student with 12 hours and 12 hours, and those are really the only 2 requirements. You don't have to be an elected senator even. It can be someone else. It just has to be that you're a qualified student. More than you probably needed to know. After the nominations, someone would move nominations cease. If that passes, those students who are named will randomly draw an order. They'll have the chance to present a campaign speech, so kind of talk about why you should vote for them. They'll leave the room so they're not speaking in front of each other because that's kind of awkward. And then we take a week off after that. After they've spoken, we used to do the election right after that, but now we take a week off because we hope that they will be reaching out to you and you will be reaching out to them to get more information about what they said and what they want to do so that you can make a more informed decision than walking into Senate and being given basically 40 minutes to meet someone, to judge them completely, and vote for them. It's kind of a tall order, so we hope that week gives you a little more time to feel like you're making a decision that you like. So they come back on the 19th, they have a chance to present a shorter kind of reminder of what they talked about, what they learned throughout the week. They will leave, and then people in the room can stand up and debate in the positive or negative for anyone who spoke. It sounds like it might be really awkward, but people are generally just very positive about why someone would be the best selection. It doesn't turn dirty or national. And then we vote, and we vote by secret ballot on a written piece of paper, so you don't have to raise hands or anything like that. We come back and we announce the results. The only thing that'll be weird that may not make sense is if we have 3 candidates, you have to win by a majority vote. So if we had people get 40, 30, and 20% of the votes, no one received more than 50. So we would narrow it down to the top 2 vote getters and vote again until someone gets the majority. We did do that once and had a tie, and since no one received a majority, it was 50-50. We had to kind of speak again and do it again, and that was a bit of a train wreck, but it worked. After that, we go into the Speaker Pro Tem, and we talked about those responsibilities already. They do organize open period speakers for Senate. We try to invite administration in or other people, other students involved in certain programs to share information with you. We think that you make better decisions as senators if you're more aware of what's happening on campus. So part of that process is to help educate and inform you to prepare to do your job better. They organize a diversity training for Student Senate. They will work with new senators who come in during the term because someone goes on a study over abroad in the spring. They leave. We appoint a new senator. They'll work to train those people.
Time.
And,
Is there a motion to extend the speaker's time? So moved. Senator Smith.
Second.
Well, how many minutes do you have?
Oh, sorry, 5.
Are there any seconds?
Second.
So we will extend the speaker's time by 5 minutes. Is that how it goes?
you would ask for objections.
Any objections?
Are there any objections?
That's why Bill's here.
So for the people who were getting really sleepy, this would be where you'd object and I would have to stop. Good choice. No, I'm almost done here, I promise. But thank you for the 5 minutes. So the Speaker Pro Tem election is much simpler. On the 19th, after the Speaker is elected, they get sworn in, they assume the duties of the chair, and then they would open up the floor for nominations for Speaker Pro Tem. People could nominate themselves or someone else. They would have a chance to speak. They would have a chance to be asked questions. They would leave. We would vote, or we would debate them the same way. They would leave. We would vote by secret ballot. It just all happens in that same night. The reason that we wait to nominate them is to see who gets speaker, because maybe someone who doesn't get speaker may want to be Speaker Pro Tem. So we resolve that election completely before we move on to Pro Tem. We talked about the 6 committee chairs. I've now read that list of names twice to you, so we'll skip that. As you think in the future about, maybe I want to be a committee chair, or who should I talk to about being a committee chair? These are their basic responsibilities. So they chair a weekly meeting. They can sponsor legislation themselves or coordinate like their committee sponsoring that legislation. Often, for example, the Priv Fee committee chair has to work with financial services at K-State, so you get to meet, get to know, and work with some of the administration to help you make the decisions you need about how much fees are going to go up, stuff like that. And generally, you're just looked to as a leader within SGA, someone who's having the opportunity to learn a lot and to share information. We hope that students would seek you out to ask you questions. Why do I pay this much in a privilege fee? Or why are we in Topeka lobbying for this or that? So you are kind of taking on a role where you're representing SGA to the students in general. Talked a little bit about the intern coordinators and what that is. I don't want to get called for time again, so I'm going to keep going here. We talked about what the Student Senate Secretary does here in these meetings. They also do that for the Executive Committee. The Parliamentarian. Parliamentarian is someone who should know Robert's rules very well. So if you have any friends that are kind of like me and kind of a nerd for that kind of stuff and they want to get involved in SGA, we're always looking for people who want to do that, because it's a small group of people that have that interest and that knowledge set. Let's just put it that way. Let's see. That's just how the Speaker of Senate can appoint and remove those positions. So if you're not doing your job, he can pull you out of that job. Dress code. Do you want to do this part?
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. I'm done.
Bill, thank you so much for speaking today. You're more welcome if you want to go back to banking.
We'll see. So before I leave, I do just want to say the fact that my whole job here is to help you guys. So when you have questions about my office is in the Center for Student Involvement. It's right around the corner when you walk in. That's kind of SGA's home base. I want you to come, stop in and say, why did this happen last week? Or how can I make this happen? The more you know, the more you can do and the more you can accomplish. And that's really important to me. I hate on these last nights for the old group are I just never felt like I figured out how this was supposed to work. And that kills me, because I know you're not getting what you can out of it. So come find me, stop me here, whatever. I'm really here to help. So please do that.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, so I'm going to briefly talk about the dress code. And so we kind of want to squeeze, it doesn't really flow properly, but I figured we needed to talk about it at some point. officially in any of our governing documents, there isn't a requirement for a dress code. Um, Last year, in attempt to kind of make it more open, so normally we would be business professional if you came to Senate at the beginning of last semester and last year. However, in attempt to kind of make it more open, welcome for students, and we started dressing down a little bit on Sundays. Some days we would we'd wear K-State gear, and some people thought we were losing a little bit of what maybe we should have been, professionalism. So student senate of this her previous term came up with a recommendation as to what they would hope student senators would wear. And for men, that is a collared shirt with a dark non-ripped jeans. You can wear khakis, which is what I'm wearing today. You can wear a full suit. You can wear a polo if you want, and you can wear sweaters if you want. I mean, it is more of a business casual look that we're going for. And for women, I don't really know anything about women's clothes, and I won't pretend to, but this is the recommendation. And it says women wear nice blouses not with dark non-ripped jeans and appropriate casual dresses and flats or heels. Do we have any questions about that? I mean, and so also let me also clarify something. I understand some of you will be coming straight from class at 7 o'clock. You won't be penalized if on that day you just can't wear your business casual clothing. We just hope that we do have a lot of times guest speakers who tend to be deans or administration. So in an attempt to show them respect, a lot of times we try to dress nice. For those of you, we want to have open access to all students. And so Career Closet is something that's available in the Bernay Family Welcome Center, specifically on the Career Center side. It's available to all students where former K-State students donate professional clothing to this place. You can come and pick anything up. Students normally take 5 items at a time, and it's free for you to use. And that's a great resource if you just have an interview and you don't have the right clothes to wear. And we want to make sure that we remove any barriers to entry, and especially something as simple as a dress code. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Robert's Rules. And so Bill probably knows more about Robert's Rules than I do. Not probably, knows more about Robert's Rules than I do. But we're going to talk a little bit about it today, and we're going to put it into practice with our debate. Okay, so what are Robert's Rules? They're a set of rules and guidelines as to how we conduct business, specifically in Student Senate. It is also used all over, not just our campus. I know some of you in fraternities use Robert's Rules in your chapter meetings. It is the most widely
Time.
used. Okay. Is there a motion to extend my time? Senator Spencer?
To extend the speaker's time by 5 minutes.
Second.
Well said. Any objections? With that, I have 5 more minutes. And so it was developed by Henry Martin Robert. Fun fact, he served in the Civil War. And the current manual has 669 pages. So if you get bored at any time, I went online at one point just to look up, could we do this in Senate? And it was really hard to find it within those 669 pages. So if any of you like to read, especially
extra copies.
yeah,
Sure.
and it is online, open source. You're more than welcome to go and read that on your own. I think it's a great read. And with that, we just had a great example as to how to make a motion, and we've been practicing that. But for those of you who don't know, if, for example, there was a time or we were to be presenting legislation, for example, this one, pretend that I'm the speaker, I would say, is there a motion to hear resolution, for this case, 15, 16, 61, or just 61? And then at this point, someone would make that motion, someone would second, and then if there are no objections, we would make that, or we would continue on, as you did with time. And that's probably the biggest kind of act that you would do with Robert's Rules in Senate, is making motions to extend time, accept the minutes, present legislation. Are there any that I'm missing?
No, that's pretty much it.
Perfect. Okay, and so another thing about Robert's Rules is that that's kind of how we conduct debate. And so as you guys have on your paper in front of you, there are some rules about Robert's Rules. So if I was to be presenting this legislation, and you were to ask like certain questions, some of them that are limited to, you can't ask any open-ended question. They always have to relate to the debate or what I had just spoken about. You really aren't supposed to ask about opinions or how I feel, or especially based on what I said, bring up hypotheticals. It really needs to be clear and concise, so that way it stays topical. Um, Based on Robert's rules, there are 4 minutes for debate, unless I'm up here giving my debate and I run out of time and someone is so gracious as to give me more time. Do we have any questions about that? And we'll be able to practice it today when we do our mock debate. Okay. Some more rules about debates, and we're going to again practice it today, is that no senator can speak more than twice on each issue. If, let's say, Senator Orzechowski was up here talking, I couldn't refer to his name. And he had just talked, and then I was about to come and talk. I couldn't refer to him as Senator Orzechowski. I'd have to say the previous speaker, just so that way you have an idea of what order things were spoken in. And I think with that, we should get started with the debate. Okay, so as you guys see this legislation in front of you, this actually came up, as you can see, 2 years ago. For those of you who don't know, Kansas State is going to be a smoke-free campus starting on June 1st. But this was something that was debated a lot in the Senate, and there was a tie, and the Speaker of the Senate broke that tie to make it a smoke-free campus. So I think what we're going to do is, whether you have an opinion or not, I'm going to split the room. Okay, so there's 7, 5, 6. I think I'm going to split it like Dad and I think you're going to Thomas. Okay, so you're going to be on this side, and then this side is the. Is that even? 7, 8. Okay, that's about as even as we're going to get. Is that diagonal split? Okay, so I'm going to make this side. You guys are going to be debating in the positive for smoking ban, and you guys are going to be against it, whether you like it or not. So with that being said, there are some statistics based on there was like a questionnaire that went out that gauged students' opinions on the smoking bill, and based on that and your own opinion on smoking, I hope that you'd be able to form an argument. And I'm going to let you guys kind of talk amongst yourselves, and if you guys want to move over so that way. And then we're going to probably talk till about for 10 minutes, and then at 8:40 we'll start doing debates. So with that, do you want to help?
It may seem kind of heartless that he said, it doesn't matter if you support it or not, but interestingly enough, we had a College of Agriculture senator who was truly in favor of the ban, but he knew a majority of the ag students that he was voted to represent through a survey that he actually did with his own college of students were against the ban. So he actually spoke against it. Perhaps not as passionately as if he were actually against it himself, but he was trying to represent the view of the students who were electing him. So it's not that you always have to go against your will, but sometimes you may have to share a message that is conflicting for yourself or something like that. So it's not too ludicrous what he's saying.
Do you guys have any questions about what the bill says? Do you guys know how to read this legislation? Because I know it's kind of tricky. So I'm going to kind of explain the whereas clauses basically are trying to state the current scenario in any of the surveys that have been done and any articles that have been cited or statistics that have been cited. That's kind of what the whereas clause is, and then the be resolved that are the changes that are being made. So if let's say there was changes to the Constitution or things like that, you have to write what that was, cross it out, and then in italics show what's being changed. Being that this is not changing anything to our governing documents, that's why there's no italics. Does that make sense? I know it's confusing.
How much have you talked about legislation?
We will talk about more in depth next week. Today's all about
The debate.
making debates and practicing Robert's rules. Do you guys have any questions? And this weekend, it's not supposed to be as I want to make it less intimidating. So, do you have any questions? All right. I guess we can just start talking. Do you want to? Okay. So you guys had a chance to talk amongst yourselves and between Shelly and myself. I think we're ready to get started. So pretend I had just presented legislation. Normally the author would stand for questions, and normally the author has the first right to debate, but that's not going to happen today. So, how it's going to work is, being that you guys are for the bill, one of you guys gets to go first and present as to why we should pass this bill and vote on this bill. And you guys want to go first. I warned you guys that this is going to happen. It doesn't have to be 4 minutes. It can be 2 minutes. But I highly recommend, I'm not highly recommend, like really efficient for you guys to get up and start debating.
So one thing I'll say is
Yes.
that often when you're getting started, you think that you need 4 minutes of like action-packed.
Yeah.
I've got 32 points that I'm going to make in the next 240 seconds, and that's not the case. Like, I wish that our group would get in the habit of not having a speech prepared, but just sharing your thoughts. Of, you know, when I first heard this bill, I really was against it, but after seeing the statistics, and I think our campus is ready for this, and so unless someone convinces me otherwise, I'm going to vote for it. That's a valid point, because you're telling people how you feel, and that's okay.
Does the 4 minutes include question time?
No. Yeah.
Nope.
So
You get 4 full minutes to speak, and then there's 3 minutes additional for questions. And the 4 minutes can be extended.
yeah.
Okay, so if you don't speak the full 4 minutes, you don't just have to like stand up there, right?
Well, so then you can. So most people end their debate by saying, "I now stand for questions."
Okay, so you can say that.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
It can be 30 seconds.
It's like,
You could, yeah. You don't have to talk for 4 minutes. You can talk. A lot of times, like, yeah, we would have debates that are 2 minutes.
And you don't have, here's another point, you don't have to stand for questions.
Yeah.
You can say, I'm not going to vote for this because I think it's a terrible idea, and I don't think our campus is ready for this, and I will not stand for questions. And you go walk down, and everyone's like, oh, snap. It's kind of
You can hear like the murmurs in the room. It's kind of cool.
but there's no point. I mean, the group as a whole, and if you stick around tonight and watch, you'll see it, likes to use questions to try to make their own points. I don't have to debate. I'm going to ask you a question that everyone knows how I feel already. And those drive me nuts. And last week I finally told them to stop it. Like, I interrupted the meeting because I'm like, no, this is not the purpose of this. So some people are afraid that's what's going to happen. It's okay to say, I'm not going to stand for questions. If you have questions, come talk to me at my seat.
With that being said, debate in a positive.
There we
Senator
go.
Hilder.
All right, if you guys can hear me well enough, I'm going to vote yes for this ban on the tobacco campus, primarily because cigarette smoking and the trash that cigarettes, whether it's the actual cigarette or the plastic from the cigarette carton or the cigarette carton itself, whether they're smoking, like designated smoking spots or not, that trash ends up on the ground and it ends up polluting our campus. One, it makes the campus look pretty bad when there's cigarettes everywhere. And then obviously it pollutes the earth in a way that has been proven scientifically for years and years on end that the plastic and the cigarettes and all the other tar and stuff that gets left out does pollute the earth. So on a big scale, cigarettes, bad. And then another point that we brought up when we were talking about this is the smoke from the cigarette doesn't only affect the smoker. It will affect people that are like around the cigarette smoker, and it will affect obviously the scent of people's clothing, and obviously some people are pretty disgusted by the smell of cigarettes, and I don't think that people should be, especially on a college campus, when you come here to learn. If you're going to the library, you're going to the library to study. You're not going there and then as a byproduct you smell like cigarettes. No one signed up for that. And then as this bill reads, you can obviously read some of the statistics from the study. 88% of people said it would not affect them, and I would even argue that the 12% of the people that might have said that it would affect if they come back, 12% of people aren't going to leave K-State because you can't smoke cigarettes on campus. That's just people that maybe want to smoke and they just want their voice heard. But if it gets banned, those people aren't leaving K-State to go to KU so they can smoke a cigarette by the library. That's just absurd. And with that, I think my points, I think I got it. I stand for questions if anyone has any. Yes.
Having considered that your primary reason was that the cigarette butt or the packet is not degradable, so if it was made degradable, would it be still appropriate to have designated smoking areas and continue smoking allowable campus?
If and only if, it would be, obviously I would think about it more, but on a scale of the scale that cigarettes are produced on right now, for that to be in effect in even 10 years would be a stretch. Like, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, how many cigarettes are sold a day and how many are produced, but it's a lot. So to change that and to make everything from non-biodegradable to biodegradable would take a very long time. And that's not something that K-State students as a whole can really affect. That would be like a national, federal issue. So I personally don't see that as a viable option that would end up happening. So yeah.
Clarification, do you know if KU has a smoking ban on their campus or not?
I do not know. I can figure out pretty quickly, but yeah, I don't see anyone. People that go to K-State, if you ask them why they go to K-State, they're going to tell you it's one, because of the people, two, because they love it. That's not going to change whether or not they can smoke on campus. Like, whether or not they can smoke on campus is not going to change why people love K-State and why they grew up in a K-State family, or obviously why they're staying here. So.
Any further questions for the speaker?
All right, thank you guys.
With that, I'll start hearing debates in the negative. Senator Heatherman?
Oh, I just have a
Further question? Okay. Or
No.
question in general? Okay.
general question,
Yes.
training
know.
question.
Yeah, okay.
In that instance, if you receive a hypothetical question, is that something that the parliamentarian would take care of, or
So-
could you just say, I will not answer?
The speaker will call you out on that.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and so like that, the thing is, that question was sort of hypothetical, but also he did bring up KU, so that's why I didn't.
Or like the.
But I think the first
one,
was
yeah.
probably pretty close because it was
Yeah.
asking him to go beyond
Yeah.
what he had said into a possibility.
Fair enough.
The other thing, and thank you for going first, that's phenomenal. If you are debating next week on something, when you stand for questions, it'll be the speaker's job to call on people to ask questions, so you don't have to pay attention, you don't have to know names. That's all on next week, that'll be on Jonathan, so it's kind of nice that you just stay up there and answer it when they come to you.
Okay. With that, I will now hear debates in the negative.
I'm leaving.
You're leaving, that's totally fine.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for coming. And
Thank
yeah, again, next week we'll be at the same time. Senator Spencer.
I'm gonna vote no on this proposal because, for number one, it pushes people to people who do want to smoke. It would push them to the edge of campus, which makes them the first thing that people see when they walk to campus is people smoking, and it's not really the best impression that we want to give people who come to see K-State. And then also, a lot of international students, their culture involves a lot of smoking, and so banning smoking could make them feel even more isolated and like out of place than they might already feel, because they'd have to stop or go somewhere not on campus to do that. I don't know what else to say.
Good.
But,
That was
okay.
great.
I stand for questions.
Any questions for the speaker? Senator O'Connor.
Have you conducted any survey regarding the number of international students for smoking ban and the number of students against smoking ban?
I've not for international students.
Any further questions for the speaker? With that, normally would it be a roll call vote?
You want to wrap it up? And
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm gonna give a little bit more time for caucus time
Okay. Yeah, so you would go back and forth, questions. It can go as long as the group allows it to go. It doesn't have to go beyond just the first person that speaks. After 5 on each side, the question can be called, which is parliamentary procedure that would end debate by voting on whether or not to end the debate. After, question?
I was gonna say, does it have to be 5 or can it be less?
It has to be 5 opportunities.
Okay.
So for example, if it was
opportunities.
positive, negative, nobody speaks. Positive, negative, nobody speaks, 5 times, that counts as 5 opportunities. So yeah, but it has to be 5 before that motion is appropriate. As soon as that's done, the speaker would then say, if there are no other motions, we'll proceed to a roll call vote, pass the microphone to the secretary, who would then read off each last name, and you respond yes or no. You may pass, which lets them keep going down the list and they come back to your name, or you may abstain, which means I'm choosing not to vote either way. We've had years where I'm going off on a diet.
Yeah,
sorry. We've had years where abstain becomes very popular because people don't want to take a stand one way or the other. And I would encourage you that unless you have like a real conflict, or like you did a survey in your college was 50-50 split on something, try to listen and make a vote in the positive and negative. The other place where that comes up is some things require like a 2/3 vote. And so by abstaining, you're actually voting no. Because if you're not voting yes to help that 2/3 happen, you're voting no. So you might think you're doing a good thing by just stepping out, but an abstain in that situation is a vote no. So a couple of things.
So just like a point of clarification, you said in a vote for 2/3, an abstention counts as a no vote. If the vote's like you just need a simple majority, abstentions do not count as a
Correct.
no vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a majority vote is majority of the votes cast. We have certain amendments and things where it's 2/3 of the Senate. So if there's 58 senators currently, it's going to take 2/3 of that. And if I abstain, I might as well vote no because I'm making it difficult. And that's okay, but go ahead and vote no. Because that's just what it is.
I just had a question about the debate. So say like just then when I went first, when I come back down, do I just have one more opportunity? Is it for that specific debate? So if there's multiple bills, I can go up?
For sure, yeah.
Okay.
The 5 minutes, or the 5 times, the 4 minutes, the 2 opportunities is per bill or per motion, and that resets. And so if it's a really long night, it can add up, but that's okay because that's kind of our job.
Any other? Yes.
If after the positive goes first and then the negative, if you call them for like more discussion, more debate, can the negative then like want to go first, forcing the positive to? Does that make sense?
Oh, she's wondering, can there be 2 negative debates that
Back
way?
to back.
Yes, so there can, but only if positives pass, like no positives are present. So positive always has to go first because the author should speak in the positive, and then negative, and then the speaker would call, are there any other speakers for the positive? And if not, then negative can go again. You don't have to wait for it. So it could be positive, negative, 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 negative. That's okay. And another point that I made to this group over here, and I'll just share it with you guys. Jonathan, last year's speaker, I'll pick on him since he's not here, was in the habit of really waiting while would call on the first person to debate and just wait. And after their debate, then he would look for the next person. And typically the speaker is able to, when he first calls for debate, you can say positive or negative, and he should take down a list of everyone at the beginning who says they want to debate, and that starts the list for the people who want to debate. Because then down the road, someone can ask, how many speakers do you have left on the debate list? And that lets you know, like, are we about done? Are there still a ton of people that want to vote? Because if there's 15 people left on the list, you might not want to end the debate because there's a lot of voices to be heard still. So that's just an FYI too that we haven't really done that in the past. Sorry, I'll stop.
Are there any other questions? Okay. So that basically concludes what we had today. So I think you guys did. I just want to say you guys did a really great job. I know I put a lot of you on the spot. I think if you started next week, we're going to be learning how to write legislation, and hopefully at the end of it, you all know how to write a commendation. And for those of you who don't know, a commendation is basically what it sounds like. you're giving commitments to either student organization or student group or certain individual. It can next week it can be as simple as I'm writing a commendation to Senator Tile for wearing a College of Engineering custom windbreaker. But a lot of times they're for student groups for doing outstanding things, and we use the collegian a lot of times as that resource to find those out. So for the coming weeks, you guys, or in the next week, you guys see a collegian article about a student organization. Feel free to bring that in because we will show you next week how to directly use the collegian article to write commendations. Do you have a question? You have a question.
Do we get sworn in next week?
Yes. Yes. The training will actually be during the Senate meeting. Is that right? Okay, we'll watch your emails for that.
Yeah, check
that
your
was
emails from Jonathan. I'll make sure he says it earlier this time.
The meeting will start at 7. The new student body president, vice president will be sworn in, and all of you will be sworn in with the returning senators as well in the groups of your college. So architecture, vet med, sorry, it'll be you. But it'll be all of you. We'll ask you to introduce yourself, tell us a couple things about yourself. We'll clap for you, and you will be official. Pretty simple.
Do you guys have any other questions about what we talked about today, or just move